Shukran sana kwa kusalia nasi na karibu. Tunaingia katika awamu ya pili ya matangazo na mijadala hapa ndani ya KBC, ikiwa ni awamu ya Kiswahili. Uko nami Zainab Said, lakini kabla hatujaenda zaidi, moja kwa moja nikupeleke katika mahakama ya juu hapa Nairobi, eneo la Milimani, ambapo mwenzangu Sarafina Robi yuko eneo hilo, anataka kutuelezea tu ni yapi yanayojiri katika eneo hilo. Kumbuka wale wote ambao walikuwa hawana pingamizi kuhusiana na matokeo ya uchaguzi yaliyotangazwa na Tume ya Uhuru ya Mipaka ya IBC wana hadi leo saa 8 kuwasilisha kesi yao. Kwa hivyo ni zoezi ambalo linaendelea katika mahakama hiyo, na moja kwa moja nitamruhusu Sarafina Robi atuelezee tu ni yapi yanayojiri kufikia sasa eneo hilo. Yanayojiri katika eneo hilo la Milimani.
Bila shaka shukran sana Zainab. Kama ulivyosema, tunawajia moja kwa moja kutoka kwenye majengo ya Milimani, ambapo tunaendelea kusubiri kesi ambazo zinawasilishwa hapa kupinga uchaguzi mkuu uliofanyika wiki iliyopita, ambapo hivi sasa mahakama ya upeo imeweza kukita kambi yake hapa katika mahakama ya Milimani, ambapo inaendelea tu kusubiri kesi ambazo zinawasilishwa hapa ili kuweza kupinga matokeo yaliyotangazwa na mwenyekiti wa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka Wafula Chebukati, ambapo kufikia sasa ni kuwa tumeweza kuona tu ni mtu mmoja ambaye ameweza kuwasilisha kesi yake hapa katika mahakama ya Milimani, ambapo ndipo mahakama ya upeo ipo ameweza kuweka kikao, na baadhi tu ya mambo ambayo tumeweza kuona ambayo anataka yaweze kuangaziwa ni kwamba, la kwanza ni kuwa anasema kuwa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC pamoja na mwenyekiti wake hawana nguvu za kuweza kuahirisha uchaguzi mkuu, ikilinganisha kuwa hapo awali mwenyekiti huyo wa Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC aliweza kuahirisha uchaguzi wa zaidi ya maeneo 8 ama ni 7, ikiwepo ni pamoja na eneo la Mombasa ambapo hawakuweza kupiga kura kwa kiti cha ugavana, na vile vile eneo la Kakamega, na vile vile maeneo mengine ambapo hawakuweza kuwapigia kura wawakilishi bunge na vile vile wawakilishi wadi. Basi pia swala la pili ambalo yataka liweze kuangaziwa hapa na mahakama ya upeo ni kusema kuwa, nikiweza kupitia tu kesi aliyowasilisha ambayo imeandikwa kwa Kizungu, anasema kuwa the respondents were not validly declared as the president and deputy president respectively. Ya tatu yosema kuwa declaration of the gazette notice is invalid and should be quashed. Na vile vile yaweza kusema kuwa an order directing the IEBC to organize and conduct a fresh presidential election in strict conformity with the Constitution and the Elections Act. Na vile anasema kuwa waliweza violate article 10 and 73 of the Constitution. Na vile anasema kuwa kulikuwa na irregularities and illegalities and should therefore be investigated for possible criminal activity. Basi tuendelea tu kusubiri tuweze kuona iwapo wengine wataweza kuwasilisha hapa kesi ambazo zinaweza kupinga uchaguzi mkuu uliofanywa tarehe 9, ikilinganisha kuwa kulingana na katiba basi wanazo siku 7 kuweza kuwasilisha kesi yao, na hii leo basi ni siku ya mwisho kabisa, siku ya 7. Basi zimesalia tu imesalia muda mchache kabla ya siku hii kuweza kukamilika, kwani ifikia hapo saa 8 kama hawajawasilisha kesi yoyote basi haitaweza kusikilizwa. Vile vile hapo awali asubuhi tuliweza kuzungumza na wakili mmoja anayewakilisha mrengo wa Azimio, ambaye aliweza kutujuza kuwa kufikia sasa wameweza kama wanavyosema hapa mahakamani kufile hiyo petition ama hiyo kesi yao kwenye online, bali hawajaweza bado kufika hapa. Basi ndio tunategea tu tuweze kuona watafika muda gani ili kuweza kuwasilisha kesi hiyo ama petition hiyo. Na vile vile tumeweza kuona kuwa mawakili wanaowakilisha mrengo wa Azimio ni wengi tu ambao wameweza kufika hapa. Labda mpiga picha wangu aweze kuwaonyesha ambao wamefika hapa katika eneo hili tu kuweza kuangazia kesi hiyo ambayo inatarajiwa kuweza kuletwa hapa, kwani ishaekwa online, lakini sasa lazima pia iletwe hapa, maana hata ile ambayo imeweza kuwasilishwa na mmoja wa wawakilishi ameweza kuweka online na vile vile ameweza kuiwakilisha hapa. Basi tuendelea tu kusubiri. Vile vile pale nje tuliweza kushuhudia asubuhi kuliweza kuwa na watu wengi ambao wameweza kufika hapa katika mahakama ya Milimani, wakitaka tu kujua hatma ama jinsi ambavyo kesi hiyo ikiwasilishwa hapa itaenda vipi. Na vile vile tumeweza kuona tu maafisa usalama kama walivyokuwa wametuagiza hapo awali, hasa vyombo vya habari, wakituambia kwa ndipo uweze kubaliwa kuingia hapa basi lazima uwe na kibali ambacho ni cha sehemu ambayo unaweza kufanya kazi, na vile vile kutoka kwa tume ya MCK. Hapo unapomwona basi ni mmoja wao tu wa one of the petitioners ambaye anafika hapa, ambaye anawasilisha kesi ambayo itaweza sasa hapo ambapo anaipeleka ni kwenye dawati ambapo labda tukiweza kusonga na mpiga picha wangu, ni dawati ambapo sasa petition hiyo itaweza kuangaliwa, itaweza kuwasilishwa hapa iweze kuangaliwa, na hapo baadaye basi itaweza kupelekwa kwa chumba kingine ambacho kipo upande mwingine, ambapo kufikia pale basi itaweza kudurusiwa kuona iwapo wameweza kufikia matarajio ambayo anatarajia kwa kesi, ndipo iweze kusikizwa. Basi hao tu ni maafisa wa mahakama, wa idara ya mahakama, ambao kufikia sasa basi wanaangalia hiyo petition. Ndio hiyo mtazamaji, basi zinaanza kuangaliwa kwa sasa. Ndio hiyo sasa iangaliwa ili iweze kuonekana kama vile kama ameweza kufikia matakwa ama matarajio ya kesi, ndipo iweze kupelekwa upande mwingine. Tutaweza kujua sasa huyu ni yupi muda mchache tu akishamaliza. Ndio hizo picha kama unavyoziona. Ndo hiyo mtazamaji, basi tumeweza kuona watu ambao wameweza kuwasilisha kesi hiyo ni Khelef Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Mumbi, Grace Kamau, na wale ambao wanaitwa kama respondents ni Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC. Vile vile wa pili ni
we have another petition which is being filed right now. This is petition number, the E number which has been assigned to the petition is Presidential Petition number E003 of 2022. Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Mumbi, Grace Kamau. Those are 4 petitioners versus in IEBC, and the chairperson of IEBC. We have Electoral and Boundaries Commission, second respondent, His Excellency William Ruto, third respondent, and the Attorney General, interested party. The petition is being filed by the law firm of Otieno Gola and Co. We will allow them, since we had previously made an announcement, the working desks for council are on this other side of the registry. We will allow them to arrange their documents before our staff pick them for verification. In case of any defect in your pleadings, you will be able to be notified for you to give us an explanation or do a correction. Okay, thank you.
Ndo hivyo mtazamaji, kama ulivyosikia, hiyo ndio petition ya pili hapa katika mahakama ya upeo ambayo ipo katika mahakama ya Milimani. Na kama nilivyokuwa nimekujuza hapo awali, hawa petitioners wane, mmoja wao ni Khelef Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Mumbi, Grace Kamau, na respondents ni Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC, alotangazwa kuwa mshindi wa uchaguzi uliofanyika tarehe 9 mwezi Agosti, William Ruto, na vile vile mwanasheria mkuu ambaye ni Attorney General. Tukiweza kuangalia tu mambo ambayo yataka yaangaziwe katika hii petition ambayo imeweza kuletwa hapa. Acha tuendelee kuangalia jinsi wanavyopanga makaratasi yao kabla ya kuwasilishwa pale mbele, lakini mambo tu wanayotaka yaangaziwe kwenye hiyo petition ni kuhusiana na, kama alivyoandikwa na kizungu hapa, ni kuwa immediately upon filing of the petition, the first respondent ambao ni Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC to avail all the material including electronic documents, devices and equipment for the presidential election within 48 hours. A declaration that the unconstitutional, non-compliance, illegalities, irregularities and improprieties in the presidential election was substantial and significant, that they affected the result thereof. A declaration that the presidential election held on the 9th of August 2022 was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, rendering the declared result invalid, null and void. A declaration that the third respondent was not validly declared as the president-elect and that the declaration is invalid, null and void. Tusikize anavyosema mtazamaji.
Hotuba ya katiba hiyo ni ishara ya kwamba mahitaji ya wananchi vile walifanya kwa polling station haikutekelezwa vizuri, na hiyo ndio ombi letu tukija leo kotini kuambia koti tuelezee kama mtu mmoja binafsi anaweza chukua jukumu ambayo kwa kikatiba imepewa kwa commission ili iweze kuitekeleza. Ya pili ambayo tunasema katika hii kesi yetu ni kwamba ukiangalia teknolojia ambayo ilitumiwa katika hii uchaguzi, hiyo teknolojia kuna mambo mingi ambayo tukiangalia kwa KPMG report imeweza kupata ya kwamba kulikuwa na watu ambao waliweza kuaccess commission bila kuwa na idhani au kuwa unauthorized users, na hiyo teknolojia ilikuwa duni. Okay, the main thing is that in our petition we are saying that the work of the commission to conduct the election vests on IEBC as a commission. Secondly, IEBC is a body corporate established with commissioners determined by law to be 7. If the commission as a body corporate has been unable to confirm, verify and tally the results of an election, can an individual member of that commission come up and say, these are my results? Those are some of the questions that we want the Supreme Court of Kenya to answer. We've also looked at the technology aspects of these elections, in which we are saying that technology is meant to be an enabler of the rights of the people to vote. When technology is compromised and it ends up undermining the right of the voter, we are going to ask the court to find that technology which was deployed by IEBC for these elections was a technology that did not facilitate the exercise of the right, did not facilitate the actualization of that right in the manner that is required under the law. You will note that in the KPMG report 17 and 2022, they actually did confirm that there were what you are calling unauthorized users who had access to IEBC, and their condemnation was that that system was vulnerable and had been compromised. Can we then, as a country, rely on to give us a winner of an election that an independent audit has demonstrated was compromised in the conduct of the elections? The other question that we want the court to consider is the conduct of Mr. Wafula Chebukati in terms of how he has conducted himself in disobeying court orders which are active from the petition number 1 of 2017 of Raila Odinga versus IEBC, the Maina Kiai case, which sets out very explicit.
The first petition filed this morning, the registrar now wants to do the lodging. The person who came with the petition is seated before the registrar.
That if the court had already spoken on the manner in which
the registrar lodging the petition on this other side, but immediately you are done with
Maji sasa, acha tukaangalia mmoja wao
yule ambaye alileta kesi
aliyowasilisha kesi, basi washamaliza kuangalia makaratasi yake. Sasa mtazamaji, tuenda kuona kama ameweza kukubaliwa ama kama ameweza kupata vigezo vyote vinavyotarajiwa. Tuelekea hapo kama unavyoona hapo. Sasa tuenda kuangalia ndo hapo sasa mtazamaji, karatasi hizo zinaweza kuangaliwa na wasajili wa mahakamani kuweza kuona kama ameweza kufikia vigezo vyote vinavyotarajiwa, ndipo basi kesi iweze kukubaliwa na kuona kama itaweza kusikizwa. Ndo hapo sasa zatiwa muhuri wa mahakamani wa idara ya mahakama. Ndio hivyo mtazamaji, basi kesi hiyo, makaratasi hayo ya kesi hiyo sasa yanatiwa muhuri. Hapo baadaye tutaweza kuambiwa kama meza kuafikia tu vile vigezo vinavyotarajiwa. Twende. Ndio hiyo mtazamaji, sasa tuende kuangalia, tupata fununu kwa wale wa Azimio la Umoja, basi kama wameshawasili. Sasa tuelekea pale tuweze kuonyesha picha hizo mbashara kabisa, ambapo wanaelekea hapa katika mahakama ya Milimani, ambapo ndipo mahakama ya upeo ilipo. Muda si mchache anaweza kufika hapa. Picha ndo kama hizo, watu ni wengi, mawakili, wanasiasa, hasa wale wa mrengo wa Azimio. Naweza kumuona aliochaguliwa kuwa mbunge wa Lang'ata, wanahabari vile vile. Ndo picha ndo kama hizo. Bila shaka watu wamefika hapa, watu wengi sana. Hiyo ni ishara tosha kuwa yule aliyekuwa bila shaka vile vile watu wa idara ya usalama wapo ngangari kabisa kuhakikisha kuwa usalama unadumishwa hapa. Tukiendelea tu kusubiri yule aliyokuwa akiwania kiti cha rais Raila Odinga anawasili hapa muda si mchache, akiwa pamoja na wafuasi wake ambao ni wengi sana. Watu wamefika hapa kwa wingi mno, mawakili na vile vile wanasiasa, wanahabari. Basi tu hapa tusubiri, muda si mchache ataweza kufika hapa. Na hivyo mtazamaji, kama tulivyokuwa tumekujuza hapa awali, ni kuwa kufikia sasa ni watu wawili tu ama ni kesi mbili tu ama petitions mbili ambazo zimeweza kuwasilishwa hapa katika mahakama ya upeo ambayo inasikizwa katika mahakama ya Milimani. Mmoja alikuwa ni John Njoroge Kamau, alafu kesi ya pili ina petitioners wane ambao ni Khalif Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Mumbi, Grace Kamau na wale ambao ni respondents ni Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC na mwenyekiti wake, vile vile alotangazwa kuwa rais siku ya tarehe 9 mwezi Agosti, William Ruto, na vile vile mwanasheria mkuu ambaye ni Attorney General. Kwa sasa tumemwacha pale ndani akiweza tu kupanga makaratasi yake kabla ya kuwasilisha kwa maafisa wa idara ya mahakama. Baadaye ataweza kuangaliwa, na kama ameweza kufikia vigezo vyote basi ataweza kutiwa muhuri. Ndo hivyo mtazamaji, picha ndo kama hizo. Ambapo sasa huyo tunayemtarajia mapicha ambazo unaweza kuziona hapo ni za aliyekuwa akiwania kiti cha urais na tiketi ya Azimio la Umoja One Kenya. Anawasili hapa mahakamani kuweza kuwasilisha rufaa yake. Ndo hivyo mtazamaji. Yes, please. Ndo hivyo mtazamaji, ndo huyo yatembea yuelekea huko akiwa tuna wafuasi wake ambao wanamuunga mkono. Ikumbuka hapo awali aliweza kuambia wafuasi wake kuwa waweze kudumisha amani, wakiendelea kusubiri kuona jinsi rufaa hiyo itakavyosikizwa. Ndo huyo mtazamaji yatembea akiwa na mawakili wake James Orengo. Tumuona James Orengo ndo huyo amewasili, ambao ni mojawapo wa mawakili wakuu wa mrengo huo wa Azimio la Umoja. Vile vile namuona Tom Ojenda vile vile amewasili. Ndo hao mtazamaji. Kuja. Ndio hivyo mtazamaji, tuingia ndani sasa kuwasilisha.
Okay, we request that the team enter.
Mtazamaji, ndo hawa wameingia. Hiyo ni mojawapo tu wa mawakili ambaye ni James Orengo. Msawashili akiwa na Dan Manza, wote ni mojawapo wa mawakili ambao wanasimamia mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja One Kenya. Wakili James Orengo na vile vile Dan Manzo. Tuwasubiri mawakili wengine waweze kufika, maana tulikuwa tumeambiwa ni zaidi ya mawakili 30. Vile vile wapo mawakili wengine hapa ndani. Meli Odhiambo namuona yupo hapa ndani. Ndo kama hivyo unavyoona mtazamaji, wamesimama tayari. Kilichobaki sasa ni kuweza kuwasilisha makaratasi. Ojenda ndo huyo kama unavyomuona akiwasalimia pale. Sasa hapa tuna mawakili watatu ambao tayari washafika. Ndo huyo Edwin Sifuna amejiunga nao. vile vile mtazamaji, ndo picha ndo hizo, ndo hao wanaingia ndani.
Tutulie. Wale wanaingia tutulie. Tafadhali tutulie.
Ndo hao Wanga, Gladys Wanga, Jeremiah Kioni.
Wale wanaingia tafadhali tulieni. Wale wanaingia tafadhali tulieni. Wananchi tutulie.
Bila shaka wameweza kuleta na wafuasi wao ambao ni kama wanataka kukubaliwa wengi hapa ndani.
Tunawakaribisha Supreme Court na tunaomba mtulie. Tafadhali tulieni.
Watu ni wafuasi ambao wanataka wakubaliwa hapa ndani. Ndio huyo Martha Karua amewasili.
Wananchi tafadhali tulieni na mketi. Tunaomba mkae kwanza, tunaomba mketi. Raila no peace. Muingia na mtulie. Tafadhali karibuni na mtulie. Karibuni Supreme Court na mtulie. Karibuni na mtulie tafadhali. Tunaomba mtulie. We urge everyone to be orderly, please. Let us have order in the courts, please. Let us have order, please. Some order, please. Please let us have some order.
Unplug my
Order, please. Let us have order in the court, please.
Ataenda nayo.
Okay. Let us settle down. Please let us settle. The media will request that you be on one side. Let us all settle, please. Settle down. Let us have some order, please. Let us have order. Okay. Be settled, please. Let us have some order before we start serving you. Wananchi tunaomba tulie, tafadhali tulieni kwanza. Kila mtu atulie tafadhali, kila mtu atulie. The media please, media people. Let us maintain some order. Okay, I can see the... Okay, let us... Okay, we need some order. Okay, this is the entrance to the registry, so I would want it cleared, please. Let this entrance be cleared. This is where we want to start the business from. Let us have some... Okay, I have some announcement to make. Tafadhali wananchi, tulieni kidogo. I need to make some announcement. For those who have come in, I need to make some announcement, please. Some silence. I take this opportunity to welcome all who have arrived now. My name is Bernard Kasavuli. I am the Deputy Registrar of the Supreme Court. We also have the Registrar of the Supreme Court, Honorable Letizia Washira. We are ready to serve you. So far we have received 2 petitions which we are working on. We will continue receiving other petitions as they come in. But for now, we urge all who have already entered the room. We have working desks this other side. For those who have come with their pleadings and any other court papers, we have room here. We will allow you to organize your documents. The law requires that we have at least a set of 6 documents, so that a set of 6 petitions, once you have those, you ensure that if you have more than 1 volume, you will have to in order so as to make it easier for our court staff once you enter. The entrance to the registry where verification will be done, it is here. But one appeal I make to all of us, let us remain calm, seated where we are. The moment verification is complete, we will allow the advocates to come in. We will allow whoever wants to come in, but a limited number, just to witness the lodging of the petition by the registrar of the court. So we urge you to be calm a bit, because paperwork will take some time. So the cooperation you give us will allow us to serve you better. So I request that for those who have already come in, if you have your pleadings, kindly move to these other tables. The tables behind the media, you will have to create some space for us, so as we receive the pleadings which have just come in. Okay, let us create a room at the entrance. This is the entrance. We request you create room. Security, kindly create room. Please create space. This is where we need some space. Tafadhali wananchi, tunaomba mtutengenezee nafasi hapa. Hapa ndio kesi, wenye wamebeba makaratasi ya kesi watapitia hapa. Kwa hivyo tukisimama kwa mlango, hiyo kesi haitachukuliwa. Tunaomba tafadhali, tunaomba tafadhali msonge kando kidogo.
You come. You must come. Where? You must receive it.
Of course, brother.
We go inside.
Wafungue barabara hapa kubwa sana. Wale tafadhali tufungue barabara kubwa hapa sana. Fungua hapa. Wale hii group iko hapa, rudi huko nyuma. Toka yote. Hakuna mtu anabaki hapa. Rudi huko. Fungueni barabara hapa kubwa sana.
Inspector, entry ya documents ni hapa. So hawa watoke wote.
Live broadcast is coming to you from the Milimani courts, where the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga's legal team has already filed an electronic copy of the presidential petition challenging President-elect William Ruto's victory. And this is a petition they are supposed to file before the 2 p.m. deadline. The legal team, according to the law, will have to file this physically also in court by 2 p.m. And pictures coming on your screen are live from the Supreme Court, where we are seeing supporters of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. We're also seeing a number of political leaders allied to the Azimio la Umoja presidential candidate and the coalition in support of their move to the Supreme Court to challenge the victory of President-elect William Ruto after the August 9th general election. Kenyans took to the polls on August 9th general election to elect their leaders. We'll take them through to the next 5 years. It is an election that was considered as one of the most peaceful the country has ever had in the recent past, compared to the previous elections, that of 2017 and 2007, one that had for the country to bring in peacemakers to call leaders on the table and forge way forward. But unlike this election, the election observer groups have time and again lauded Kenyans for a peaceful election, and also the tolerance that political leaders had during the campaign period, one that aimed at uniting the country before, during, and after the August polls. The pictures coming on your screen are live from the Milimani courts. And this means that if the courts rule in favor of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, then we will have to follow the directions of the courts. And for now, we have Sarafina Robi on the ground. Let's cross over and listen in.
Enda nyuma ya meza. Waje wapi.
Let's have one table here.
Be aware that you had nothing to do with that.
But I wasn't able to do anything to save it.
We need to find this gun. It's the same caliber, but a different gun.
This can only mean that we don't have just one murderer. We have two.
Kupata mithali 6:20 kama sikiza tune kwenye simu yako, bonyeza *811 *817#.
Methali 6:20. Mwanangu, shika maagizo ya baba yako, wala usisahau mafundisho ya mama yako. Yaweke daima moyoni mwako, yafunge shingoni mwako, yatakuongoza njiani mwako, yatakulinda wakati ulalapo.
Kupata mithali 6:20, bonyeza *811 *817#. *811 *817#.
Good afternoon. Thank you for creating time for us. You are in time for the Lunchtime News. My name is Irene Muchuma Odem. On sign language interpretation, we have Lucy Mwaura. It is the 22nd day in the month of August 2022. The Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition has moved to the court to petition and challenge the Victory of President-elect William Ruto. My colleague Serafina Robi is on standby, and that is where we will kick off this bulletin from. The pictures on your screen are coming live from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has its guidelines, and this allows the Azimio la Umoja One coalition to file its petition by 2 p.m. It has already filed it electronically, perhaps to avoid being locked out, according to the Constitution, which allows them to file their petition by 2 p.m. Serafina Robi says that 39 boxes have already arrived at the Supreme Court ahead of this event that many Kenyans are expecting to hear the move by the court. This is after Kenyans got to the polls on August 9th to elect their leaders who will take them through the next 5 years. It is one of the elections that has been ranked as most peaceful in the recent past. This, as you compare to the previous elections conducted in 2017, also 2007, the election observer groups have time and again given Kenya a clean bill of health, saying that the elections were peaceful and the political leaders were tolerant, especially when during the campaign period they would preach peace in enhancing unity across the country, urging Kenyans to be united and peaceful, saying that Kenya is greater than an individual, and we should always look forward to making the country greater than before. We have also seen quite a number of leaders at the Supreme Court. This as the Azimio la Umoja is set to physically file its petition before the 2 p.m. deadline, which is just 1 hour away. And the pictures coming on your screen are live from the Milimani Law Courts. And just as I mentioned earlier, 39 boxes have already arrived. This has been taken there by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition as they challenge the victory of President-elect William Ruto. 12 million Kenyans took to the ballots on August 9th to elect their leaders, and the results from the courts would determine the direction that the country will take after the ruling by the Supreme Court. It is a process that will be interesting for Kenyans to follow, and KBC Channel 1 will be at the fore to give you a reason to make it your channel of choice. And that is where we will be for the better part of this afternoon as events unfold. And earlier on, we saw quite a number of leaders allied to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition making their way to the Supreme Court. I would say we had the Nairobi woman representative elect Esther Passaris leading a number of other women leaders allied to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. And it is a procedure that has attracted a number of Kenyans who are supporters of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. Perhaps in solidarity, they have been able to make their way to the courts. We had chanting videos of supporters allied to the Azimio la Umoja who are already at the Supreme Court. And we are also informed that Makueni Senator-elect Dan Manzo is one of the lawyers in the legal team of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. And at some point, he confirmed that the case had been filed electronically, even as they intended to move there physically before the 2 p.m. Deadline. And this is for them not to be locked out by the Constitution on the timeline of submitting these papers the Supreme Court. And the pictures on your screen are live from the Milimani Law Court. Small boxes making their way inside the Supreme Court premises. This, as I mentioned earlier, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is challenging the victory of President-elect William Ruto. Security has been heightened. Earlier on, we also had a section of the clergy who are at the Supreme Court, perhaps to give guidance for faithful and also the supporters who are there ahead of this afternoon deadline event. And a battery of journalists are also on the ground. We have our very own Sarafina Robi, who will definitely give us details as they unfold. KBC Channel 1 is committing to bring you factual events from the Milimani Law Courts. This as the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is challenging the victory of President-elect William Ruto under the Kenya Kwanza. And we are expecting the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga also to talk to us in regards to this events. And if I take you back in August 2017, the Supreme Court annulled the election after the then presidential candidate under the Orange Democratic Movement, Raila Odinga, rejected President Uhuru Kenyatta's victory. And this was quite a tough procedure for both sides because of the law, and we had to go for another exercise that took Kenya to the polls. And the aftermath of this year's court decision is keenly watched, not only in Kenya, but also Africa and across the borders. And this is one of the tests for democratic maturity in Kenya. Kenya is ranked as the East Africa's richest economy, and we would not want to see a replica of ugly scenes where Kenyans would not talk to one another. Perhaps that is the reason why this time round political leaders placed their political differences aside to ensure that even as they campaign, even as they sell their manifesto to Kenyans, they are speaking peace messages and putting the church at the fore in also giving guidance to ensure that the elections are conducted peacefully in the August 9th general election. However, it is not a decision that was well received by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, but so far the Election Observers Group said political leaders in Kenya set the pace for the world that we can exercise our democratic rights peacefully and also conduct elections peacefully and ensure that we are united even after the elections. Kenyans have gone back to work. We can witness the traffic snarl-ups, a sign that normalcy has returned, especially during the early morning hours and late in the evenings. And around the central business district, business has got back to normalcy. This is a sign that Kenyans have agreed to the decision of the ballot, and they have agreed that they will move forward even as we have the petition by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition being challenging the victory of President-elect William Ruto under the Kenya Kwanza coalition. The Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha, said pupils and students will remain in school even during this electioneering period. And as petitions move to court, he said the decisions by leaders will not affect the school calendars. Remember, the school calendars were affected largely by the COVID-19 pandemic. Pupils and students had to stay home for quite some time, and this affected the routine, and also they lagged behind on syllabus. And also it came at a time that Kenya was embracing the CBC curriculum, one that the education experts believed it's for the good of our children, and it will change the system to a better system of education. However, all the same, there are those who have been opposing the CBC, but a number of Kenyans are glad that children are back to school, and as much as we are having petitions in court, normalcy has returned. People can be able to make a living from their normal way of going to work or conducting businesses. And this is as the Azimio la Umoja even announced earlier that they will move to court to challenge the victory of President-elect under the Kenya Kwanza coalition, William Ruto. The pictures on your screen are coming live from the Milimani court. So a leader after another arrives to the Milimani court. That is one of the leaders allied to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, making its way to the Supreme Court after the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition made a petition earlier on electronically before the 2 p.m. deadline, where right now they are moving the ballot boxes, or they're moving the boxes with petitions to the Supreme Court for the hearing by the judges at the Supreme Court. We'll be expecting reactions from Kenyans, and we have our reporters across the country who will be giving us events as they unfold. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition supporters at the Milimani courts chanting the songs they know how best to appreciate their leaders. This is amid heightened security at the Milimani courts. This is after the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission announced the victory of President-elect under the Kenya Kwanza coalition, William Ruto, who garnered 7 million votes, 7,176,141 votes, which according to IEBC, this is equivalent to 50.59% of valid votes cast. And this showed that President-elect was ahead of his main competitor, the former Prime Minister, who is also the Orange Democratic Movement's party leader, Raila Odinga, who managed 6 million votes, and this was 6,942,930 votes, representing 48.85%. Kenyans are expecting the petition will not disrupt their activities as they have resumed normalcy across the country. This is also coming at a time the country is trying to accept the hard economic times and find ways of making life easier for themselves and their families. There is the issue of school fees. Children have gone back to school. There is the issue of high cost of living. There is the issue of escalating fuel prices, one that is largely attributed to the high cost of living in the country at this point. But all the same, most Kenyans believe that all will be well, even as the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is moving to court to petition the victory of President-elect William Ruto. There's also a voter who moved to court this morning to challenge the victory of President-elect William Ruto. But the President-elect William Ruto has been avoiding to comment on issues in regards to the courts after he was announced victorious by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Yesterday, he held a Thanksgiving ceremony in the county of Kiambu, and he urged Kenyans to be united. For him, the country is moving forward. For him, is looking forward in being accountable for Kenyans after the general election. But back in his mind, he's knowing that the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is moving to court to petition his victory, and that is why he also placed his legal team so that they are able to handle the petition, which will be filed by the deadline of 2 p.m. today. And before the 2 p.m. deadline, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition around 11 a.m. filed the petition electronically, and this was most likely to avoid being locked out by the Constitution on the timing of putting the petition at the Supreme Court. And this is not the first time that the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition presidential candidate Raila Odinga moved to the courts challenging the victory of a presidential candidate. Raila Odinga has time and again after a general election that he feels that has not been fair and transparent, will move to court to seek justice. And this is the 5th time the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition made an attempt to presidency, and it turned out that William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza coalition emerged the winner from the concluded general election that saw 12 million Kenyans taking to the ballot to cast their votes. And we had opinion polls before the general election. These opinion polls would say the leaders who are at the fore ahead of the August polls, but there are those ones who would take it positively. There are those ones who disputed the opinion polls. And at time and again, you would see Kenyans reacting to these opinion polls. Just like today, we're expecting mixed reactions from Kenyans. And here at KBC Channel 1, we're ready to bring you the news as they unfold, and not only here in the capital of Nairobi, where the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is placing the petition, but also across the country. We have also seen the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition running mate, Martha Karua, urging Kenyans to be united. This is after the announcement by the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission that President-elect William Ruto emerged the winner from the August 9th general election after the presidential campaigns that were conducted across the country and the elections that Kenyans conducted on August 9th. And Karua has said that the rule of law will apply. She has, however, been optimistic that the courts will rule in the favor of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. And the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition settled on Karua for the running mate position because they believed in her transparency, and they believed she will be able to handle corruption cases as expected of her. But at the same time, women were happy about the nomination of Martha Karua as the running mate under the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, and they said it was about time that we have women leaders in powerful offices who would address their concerns. Women said over the years they have not been given the priorities they are supposed to be given, and also their positions in the society were at some point neglected by the society. But generally, from a political analyst that we have been able to talk to time and again, they said there's a great improvement in this general election where more women leaders were elected to parliament and also to gubernatorial positions and also senatorial positions. And Nakuru County set the pace for women leaders. Nakuru County elected woman leader Susan Kihika for the governor position. They also had a woman leader for the senatorial position, and also all members of parliament. But that aside, it is an election that Kenya got a clean bill of health from the election of Savos Group, which said this is one of a kind. And at one point, you would hear leaders from Nigeria lauding the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission for the good use of the KIMS kit. And they lauded Kenya for being at the fore for electronic concerns and technology-wise. But for now, I'll get you back to the Supreme Court, where my colleague Serafino Robi is on standby. Let's listen to the events from that end.
Wale baba, tunajua picha wanataka nizo za kina Raila, si 1 2 1 2. Ambayo imeweza kuwekwa katika mahakama ya Milimani ili kuweza kusikiza rufaa ambazo zinawasilisha hapa kupinga matokeo yaliyotangazwa kuhusiana na kiti cha urais. Kama unavyoona, wote ni baadhi ya wafuasi wa mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja wa Kenya ambao wamekuja hapa na vinara wao wakiongozwa na Raila Odinga, na kufikia sasa hivi ni kuwa wameweza kuingia pale ndani ili kuweza kuangalia kama anavyosema huyo afisa wa idara mahakama anavyosema ni kwa wanaendelea tu kudhibitisha hiyo rufaa iliyowasilishwa hapa na vinara wa mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja wa Kenya. Vile vile unaweza kuwaona ni baadhi tu ya mawakili wa mrengo huo ambao baadhi yao wameweza kuingia pale ndani katika chumba ambacho wanaweza kudhibitisha rufaa hiyo kama imeweza kuafikia vigezo hivyo. Na hapa tulipo, kitu ambacho tunaweza kuona ni kuwa jumba hili ambalo tupo ni wafuasi wao hapa ndani, mawakili wengine wapo ndani, vile vile wanasiasa, na vile vile maboksi takriban 39 yameweza kuwasilishwa hapa ndani ili kuweza kuunga rufaa hiyo, japo itaweza kukubaliwa kama atakuwa ameafikia vigezo vyote vinavyotakikana. Basi maboksi hayo yote 39 yataweza kusaidia kusikizwa kwa rufaa hiyo. Ikumbukwe kwamba mtazamaji, basi leo ni siku ya mwisho ya iwapo mtu yataka kuweza kuleta rufaa kupinga matokeo yaliyotolewa ama yaliyotangazwa wiki iliyopita kuhusiana na kiti hicho cha urais. Na kwa sasa basi mtazamaji, kama nilivyokuwa nimekujuza ni kuwa hii leo basi ni siku ya mwisho kulingana na katiba, ambapo imempa mtu yote ambaye anataka kuwasilisha rufaa kwenye mahakama ya upeo siku 7 kutoka siku ambayo matokeo yaliweza kutangazwa. Ikumbuke kwamba matokeo yaliweza kutangazwa siku ya Jumanne, siku ya Jumatatu wiki iliyopita. Kwa hivyo basi hii leo ndo siku ya mwisho na zimesalia tu dakika chache kufikia sasa. Tumeweza kuona rufaa takriban 3 zimeweza kuwasilishwa hapa, mojawapo ikiwa ile ambayo imeweza kuwasilishwa na John Njoroge Kamau, ya pili ikiweza kuwasilishwa na watu 4 ambao mtazamaji, acha nikusomee majina yao, ambao wanapinga tu halefu huyo mmoja wao wanapinga uchaguzi, matokeo haya yaliyotangazwa siku ya Jumatatu wiki iliyopita, na kuweza kusema kuwa njia iliyotumika kuweza kuafikia matokeo haya kwa ya kimsingi. Basi rufaa hiyo ya pili ina Khelef Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Mumbi, Grace Kamau. Alafu washtakiwa hapo ni Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC, mwenyekiti wake vile vile alotangazwa kuwa alikuwa amekuwa mshindi siku ya Jumatatu William Ruto, mwanasheria mkuu ama Attorney General. Vile vile ni baadhi tu ya washtakiwa ambao wapo kwenye rufaa hilo wasilishwa na huyo Khelef Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Mumbi, Grace Kamau. Alafu sasa hiyo rufaa ya 3 basi ndio iliwasilishwa na mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja wa Kenya, ambao tutasubiri tu tuweze kujua basi wanataka nini kwenye hiyo rufaa. Vigezo vyao ni vipi, wanaangazia nini, ni mambo yapi ambayo wanataka iweze kuangaziwa na mahakama ya upeo. Basi pia tukiweza tu kufuatilia jinsi ambavyo shughuli nzima inafuatiliwa kuwasilisha hii leo. Hao washtakiwa wanazo siku 4 kuweza kujibu hiyo rufaa, na baada ya hapo basi kama kuna yule ambaye anaweza yataka aweze kujumuishwa kwenye hii rufaa kama rafiki wa koti ama amicus curiae, basi anayo siku 1 kuweza kuweka ombi lake, na hapo baadaye basi mahakama itaweza kuangalia kama itaweza kumkubalia, na kama yataka iweze kukubaliwa basi ikilinganishwa na rufaa ya mwaka 2017 ni kuwa yafaa kuzingatia jambo moja tu sio kujihusisha na mambo mengi ambayo yameweza kuwasilishwa na hao waliowasilisha rufaa hiyo. Basi yafaa tu kuzingatia jambo moja ndipo aweze kukubaliwa kwenye rufaa hii. Rufaa hii vile vile itaweza kusikizwa na jopo la majaji 7 wa mahakama ya upeo wakiongozwa na Jaji Mkuu Martha Koome na vile vile naibu wake Philomena Mwilo, wenzake Njoki Ndungu, Ibrahim Mohamed, Isaac Lenaula, Smokin Wanjala, vile vile William Ouko. Basi wakati tunafuatilia tu, manake wakishamaliza kuleta rufaa hii na vile vile washtakiwa wakaweza kuleta majibu yao kulingana na rufaa hii, basi kutaweza kuwa na kikao ambacho kitaweza kuwekwa na jopo hilo la majaji 7 ambao wataweza sasa kupanga jinsi ambavyo rufaa hii itaweza kusikizwa. Basi itaweza kusikizwa pindi tu watakapomaliza kuwasilisha ama kujibu hiyo rufaa ambayo itakuwa ambayo imewasilishwa hii leo, na baada ya hapo basi ikishasikizwa wana takriban siku 14 kuweza kutoa uamuzi wao ama hukumu yao. Ndipo Wakenya waweze kujua hatima itakuwa vipi, kama kweli hayo matokeo yataweza kukubaliwa ama kukataliwa. Basi hilo linatarajiwa liweze kusemwa baada ya takriban siku 14. Vile vile hapa, mtazamaji, tumeweza kuwaona mawakili kadha wa kadha. Baada yao ni mawakili ambao waliweza kuwa katika rufaa za hapo awali ambazo tuliweza kuwaona mwaka 2017. Vile vile tumeweza kumuona alikuwa mwanasheria mkuu Githu Muigai. Huyo atakuwa anawasilisha tume huru ya uchaguzi na mipaka IEBC. Hajaweza kufika hapa, lakini ni baadhi tu ya mawakili ambao tunatarajia waweze kuwa katika rufaa hii. Wale ambao tumeweza kuwaona hapa ni mawakili wa mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja wa Kenya, wakiongozwa tu na baadhi ya mawakili wakuu kama vile ama wanavyoita senior counsel. Tumeweza kumuona Orengo, James Orengo, tumeweza kumuona Dan Manzo, tumeweza kumuona Tom Ojenda, tumeweza kumuona wakili Murgor, na mawakili tu wengi sana, kikosi kikubwa sana cha mawakili, na vile vile wakiandamana na baadhi tu ya wanasiasa wa mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja, Azimio, ambao ni wengi sana. Hata kufikia sasa tumuona Edwin Sifuna yupo hapa, na vile vile wanasiasa wengi tu waliochaguliwa kwenye mrengo huo. Hapo baadaye basi wale ambao wameweza kushtakiwa kwenye rufaa hii ambao ni tume huru ya uchaguzi na mipaka IEBC, na vile vile Kenya Kwanza wakiongozwa na aliotangazwa kuwa mshindi William Ruto. Baada hapo watatarajiwa kuweza kujibu rufaa hiyo kwa takriban siku 4 peke yake. Kwa tumeweza kuona maboksi 39. Sasa hatujui kama wataweza kweli kupitia maboksi haya yote 39 na kuweza kuwasilisha katika mahakama ya upeo, ama wataweza kuomba muda zaidi. Lakini wanavyokubaliwa basi na maelezo yaliyotolewa na mahakama ya upeo, itabidi waweze kuzingatia hizo siku 4. Basi sikio watakayoleta ama watakayotarajia kuweza kuleta, tunatarajia kuweza kuona pia mawakili ambao wataweza kufika hapa. Kwa sasa ni kwa jumba hili limejaa sio tu mawakili, limejaa vile vile wanasiasa wakongwe kabisa. Tumuona Charity Ngilu, tumuona Peter Kenneth. Ndio kama mpiga picha wangu waweza kuwaonyesha wako pale. Ndo hawa hapo, Peter Munya kama waweza kuwaona. Hao tu ni baadhi ya wanasiasa wakongwe kabisa ambao wamefika hapa kuweza kusaidia kuwasilisha rufaa hii. Kwani kufikia sasa ni kwa vinara hao Raila Odinga na naibu wake Martha Karua, na vile vile mawakili wao wameweza kwenda katika chumba kingine ambacho kipo upande mwingine, ambapo naibu wa msajili wa hapa kotini anaweza tu kuwaelekeza wakiendelea kudhibitisha hiyo rufaa kama imeweza kuwafikia hivyo vigezo vyote vinavyotakikana. Wakishamaliza basi wataweza kuweka muhuri katika hayo makaratasi ambayo yameweza kuwasilishwa upande mwingine, na baada ya kudhibitisha basi itakubaliwa basi waweze kuwapa au wenzao washtakiwa, ambapo kwa kizungu anasema to serve. Wakisha serve basi hao washtakiwa watatarajiwa waweze nao kutengeneza ama kujibu hiyo rufaa kwa takriban siku 4. Hapo baadaye basi hao waliowasilisha rufaa wana siku moja kuweza vile vile kuleta ombi lingine ama linaloita interlocutory application. Wanayo siku moja kuweza kuwasilisha hiyo, na yule ambaye anataka kuweza kujumuishwa kwenye rufaa hii kama rafiki wa koti ama amicus curiae anayo siku moja vile vile kuweza kuwasilisha ombi lake. Hao tu ni baadhi ya wafuasi wa mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja wa Kenya ambao wamejaa hapa pomoni, wakiwa na wanasiasa kama unavyoona. Yule ni Edwin Sifuna aliochaguliwa kwa seneta wa kaunti ya Nairobi, akiweza tu kuongea na baadhi ya wafuasi wao ambao wameweza kufika hapa, na vile vile baadhi ya mawakili ambao wako hapa, kwani ni baadhi tu wameweza kukubaliwa kuweza kuingia pale. Na basi tuona kama hilo ni ombi lingine ambalo limeweza kuwasilishwa hapa. Tumeona mtu yengea hapo anabeba boksi. Basi tusubiri tuweze kujua kama pia hiyo ni rufaa nyingine, maana tayari rufaa 3 zishawasilishwa hapa. Moja iliwasilishwa na John Joroge Kamau, ya pili imeweza kuwasilishwa na watu 4 akiongozwa na Khalif, alafu ya 3 ndio hii imeweza kuwasilishwa na Azimio la Umoja wa Kenya. Basi tumeona mwingine yengea hapo. Awali alikuwa amekuja akaambiwa hajafikia vigezo ambavyo vinatakikana, akarudishwa. Sasa tumeona tena ameingia. Acha tusubiri tuone kama ataweza kukubaliwa. Akikubaliwa basi tutaweza kutangaziwa tuweze kujua. Kwa sasa kufikia sasa ni kuwa zimesalia takriban dakika 24. Kwa hivyo iwapo mtu ana rufaa inayopinga matokeo yaliyotangazwa siku ya Jumatatu wiki iliyopita, zimesalia tu dakika 24 kikatiba ama sio kikatiba, kulingana na maelezo yaliyotolewa na mahakama ya upeo kuweza kuwasilisha rufaa hiyo. Iwapo itafika saa 8 na hajawasilisha, basi rufaa hiyo haitaweza kuchukuliwa hapa. Baadhi tu ya mambo ambayo pia yanatakikana ndipo rufaa yako iweze kuchukuliwa hapa katika mahakama ya upeo ni kuwa wastahili kuweza kuweka hela takriban milioni 1 ambayo inaitwa kama security. Watakikana waweze kuweka milioni 1 ndipo uweze kuandikisha rufaa yako iweze kuangaziwa na kudhibitishwa kabla ya kusikizwa. Vile vile tukiweza kuzingatia tu baadhi ya mambo ambayo yaliweza kuangaziwa kwa rufaa zilizopita hapo awali. Out ni baadhi ya mawakili, ndio huyo Tom Ojenda. Ndio hizo picha za wakili Tom Ojenda. Out ni baadhi ya mawakili: Charity Ngilu, Peter Kenneth, Jeremiah Kioni. Out ni baadhi ya wanasiasa na vile vile mawakili, kama unavyomwona pale senior counsel Tom Ojenda ambaye aliweza kuchaguliwa kuwa seneta wa Kisumu. Ikionyesha kuwa wanasiasa tu mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja wamejitolea sana kufika hapa ili kuweza kusaidia na kuonyesha umoja wao. Pia namuona Peter Munya hapo kando ya Peter Kenneth. Ndio hao wanaendelea tu kujadili, wakiendelea kuwasubiri vinara wao ambao tuliweza kumwona Raila Odinga, naibu wake Martha Karua, vile vile Kalonzo Musyoka, wote wameweza kufika hapa. Vyombo vya habari pia vimejaa humo ndani, vya kitaifa na kimataifa. Vile vile idara ya usalama ipo mgangari kabisa kuhakikisha kuwa shughuli hii itatizike kivyovyote. Nikumbuke kwamba siku ya kusikiza rufaa hii basi haitafanyika katika jumba hili ambalo tupo sasa hivi. Hii hapa ni sehemu tu ya kuweza kupokea rufaa, kuweza kupokea stakabadhi zozote ambazo zitaweza kutumika katika rufaa hiyo. Na kando na kupokea stakabadhi zinaweza kudhibitishwa. Na baada ya kudhibitishwa basi ikawa kuwa zipo sawa kabisa, ndipo zitaweza sasa kuwa stakabadhi za mahakamani ama za kotini. Na baada ya hapo basi wataweza tumsikize
verification.
Ndio hiyo wameweza kudhibitisha
one set of the petition by Azimio. We are now heading to the process of lodging by Registrar Honorable Leticia Wachira. She's ready for lodging. Initially we had said we will allow the media to come and take what is going on. So I will urge the security to allow members of the Fourth Estate to come in, but they will not proceed beyond. Only members of the press. Security, you can lock the door. Lock the gate, lock the gate. Please let us be orderly. Yes, for the petition which has just been brought, we are coming to serve you. Be patient, we are coming to serve you. Let us allow the lodging of the petition currently being verified.
Afande. Steve. Relax. Thank you. What do I choose?
The pictures coming to you live on your screen are from the Supreme Court. This is after the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition placed its petition in court challenging the presidential results that placed William Ruto as the president-elect after the August 9th general election. My colleague Serafina Robi is on standby, and we have seen the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition and its allied leaders making their way to the Supreme Court, and they have given their petition, and this earlier on they gave out an online petition just to ensure that they are not locked out of the 2 p.m. deadline. And news just in, the IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati says they postponed elections that were supposed to be held on August 9th from the counties affected will now be held on August 29th. And he is also allowing the political candidates up to the 27th of this month to hold their campaigns before the elections that will be taking place on the 29th of August. And also 6 IEBC commissioners have been listed as interested parties in the first petition filed against Wafula Chebukati, who is the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And this is after the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition filed its petition. It's going to be an interesting afternoon. My colleague Regina Manyara is on standby to have an interview session with an expert in regards to legal matters. This as the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition moves to court to challenge the presidential results that announced President-elect William Ruto victorious from the concluded general election. It has been a busy morning from the Supreme Court. The pictures coming from your screen are live from the Milimani courts. We have seen supporters allied to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition chanting their leaders. And let's cross over and see what's happening right now.
And those who are good at, drafting, and those who were preparing the petition as a whole. We had analysts, data experts, so a lot of work has gone into this.
You're going to be involved yourself in the petition?
Well, why am I talking?
Thank you.
What are you petitioned? What is your petition?
We are challenging the purported election of Mr. Ruto as president-elect. We got many grounds in the petition, and I think we have a very, very strong petition. It can never be stronger.
Can you explain to us a few points? What are your key points you are petitioning about?
There is substantial complaints against the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. He committed many transgressions. We think those transgressions are actually criminal offenses. The commission itself was dysfunctional. It was like a criminal enterprise. My brother, Mr. Kanchori, you remember at Bomas, described Bomas as a crime scene. And I think our petition will bear that out. There were also acts of interfering with the integrity of the technology, especially in transmission, KIMS kits. And I remember there was a laptop which was seized and retrieved at Bomas, and it demonstrated quite clearly that our opponents were engaged in monkey business. This was a stolen election. And I think the older guys knows that this is a stolen election. And if people can do this kind of acts, then we should never have elections at all, because they are pointless if people can conduct themselves in such a manner. There's also the story of the Venezuelans. That story is told very well in this petition, because they were brought in to interfere with the democratic process of electing a president of the Republic of Kenya. And we are sure at the end of this, Raila Amolo Odinga is going to be president, Martha Karua is going to be deputy president, and Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka is going to be prime minister.
One question. Are you looking for retiring or are you looking for nullification of the election result?
All those orders we're praying for.
For Orengo, there's an issue of from 34Bs that were left unannounced, 38 of them from the constituency. Do you have an issue there?
We have a lot of issues from 34Bs, 34As, 34C, all that documentation. A lot of problems with them. But I think let's argue that petition in court.
Are you also looking at a scenario of separate criminal proceedings against the chairman?
That will come. That will come in the fullness of time. But now we are dealing with a petition. And you know, we can have complaints of the Commission of Election Offences. And you have done that elaborately. And Mr. Chebukati, in those transgressions and commission of offences, criminal offences, although they're election offences, but they're criminal offences, he has to be accountable. He cannot hide behind the commission. He cannot hide behind his office as chairperson. He is personally culpable. Shukrani, wacha tumalize kazi. Natieng.
Azimio Umoja presidential candidate Raila Odinga there, and one of the key principals under the coalition, Kalonzo Musyoka, making their way out of the Supreme Court. Earlier on, we had James Orengo, who is the governor-elect for Siaya County, and he's forming part of the legal team for the Azimio One Kenya coalition, together with Paul Mwangi and Otiende Amolo. Under Kenya Kwanza, we have Fred Ngatia, Nelson Harvey, and Hamed Nasir Abdullahi. But as I hand over to Regina Manyara, I would like to know what will be the fate of James Orengo being part of this legal team for the Azimio Umoja, considering he's the governor-elect and he would be sworn in. What if he's sworn in before the exercise comes to an end? Regina?
Well, we have seen quite a number of governors. Like, I would go back to what was happening in Kisumu, or rather what is about to happen in Kisumu County on the 25th of August, being Thursday, and that's the swearing-in ceremony of Governor-elect Anyang' Nyong'o there, and Matthew Owili as the deputy governor there. So I tend to think, being part of the petitioner, the first petitioner's legal team, James Orengo there, will hold off that swearing ceremony up until this matter is determined. But let's hear from our legal mind in studio this afternoon, none other than John Swaker, a lawyer and a political analyst. Maybe you can put it in more legal aspect of it. Karibu.
Thank you so much. There's nothing more legal than what you've said. It's indeed true that as long as James Agri Orengo is yet to be sworn in and formally take over the office of the governor as an executive, he still can actually go to court and be a part of the representation to the Azimio team in this current presidential election petition. So nothing can be taken away from him at the moment.
Yeah. And we have seen since the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, every time we have a general election, we've been ending up with a presidential petition. Now let's go through the pictures that we have been seeing earlier, and as you can see, Kenyans are still milling around the courts there. And we have been receiving those live pictures. So we'd want to like look at what did it take, or rather I have seen already online people are asking why the cartons, why the huge documents. We saw this signs and pictures in 2017 and 2013. Is it really necessary? And we know we have two options of actually filing a petition, physically or manually, so to speak, and also online. Maybe take us through why the documentation.
Maybe I'll bisect it into three. The first and foremost, this petition has been filed online. Number two, all they are now depositing with the registrar are basically what they'll call evidence, and it's in form of documents. And the third thing is that these documents, first and foremost, they are bulk, they are many. And then you must be able to do several copies. Remember, the Supreme Court judges alone are 7. So each one must have his own set of documents. Then you must remember that you have sued the respondents. Each of the respondents must get a similar set. Then we have the interested parties, who equally must be served with a set of each document. Then, of course, a copy must remain with the registrar. And now the advocates appearing for the petitioners, if the petitioners are 3 or 2 or 4, equally they must have a set of their documents.
That explains the nature, the cartons and the files and such.
That explains why you're saying a truckload full of documents.
Yeah, a truckload. Because Kenyans have been trying to, make, somewhat just try and understand what they're seeing from the television screens there. We see many asking even to a point that are those ballot papers, There's been a lot of talk. Thank you for putting that into perspective. Now, let's look at the presidential petition in itself. It has been filed. It has met the deadline. Remember, the deadline was today at 2 p.m. And you see they have met the deadline there, having it lodged and also the serving. Let's look at the respondents vis-a-vis the petitioners. I think we start off with the petitioners in this particular presidential election petition. Yeah, of course, our laws are clear that upon the pronunciation of the presidential election, whoever has won, whoever has lost, you have 7 days upon which you have to then lodge your subsequent petition. It is instructive to note that today, 2 p.m., was the deadline of the 7 days. And so what takes effect thereafter is that the Azimio side, who are the petitioners, must have lodged this document by 2, which they have. So it goes back now to service, because the respondents will not be served through the media. They've been watching perhaps, but that is not service. The fact that somebody has lodged a case against you does not constitute service. So they must be physically served. They must be given these documents. Remember, other than just lodging the petition, there are other requirements that you have to comply with, one being a deposit of 1 million as security for costs. So the registrar is enjoined in law to actually be able to go through all those requirements, other than just looking at the petition and ensuring that everything is in accordance to the law. So as then you can determine that the petition as filed is right and appropriate. Then now you move to the next stage, which is basically to serve. The law is clear that upon service, which I believe they'll be able to serve. Actually, the law says you can serve through electronic media. That means you can do an advert in the papers, or physically. I believe they are ready to be served. They'll be served physically. Then they'll have 4 days to basically be able to bring in their responses. Then it's upon the expiry of those 4 days that the court will now hold what we call a pre-trial conference, where all sides have been able to respond. Then the court puts its foot down in terms of the directions that this petition will take, who will be heard first, for how long. So just in housekeeping. Then, of course, if there are any preliminary issues that need to be dealt with before we go to the substantive petition, the court has a day to deal with those applications. Maybe whoever wants to join the court as amicus curiae, as a friend of the court, whoever is willing to come in as an interested party,
all that the court will determine. Whoever wants what document to be expunged, to be removed, or to be added, or to be given a little bit more time to add to some of his evidence or the evidence, the court will grapple with all those things within a day or two.
Now, before we get into further details in regard to what you have been seeing earlier there, having Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition there filing their presidential petition, let's go back to Milimani Law Courts with our reporter Serafina Ruby, who has counsel Orengo on ground to just brief us with especially the prayers that they'll be putting forth. To you, Serafina, good afternoon.
We are also taking into account the manner in which the technology that was used in the conduct of the elections was abused, and we have evidence where systems, networks, laptops, and the entire KIMS kits were corrupted in order to achieve a result in favor of Mr. Ruto. I have never seen a most corrupt election in our country. In fact, if elections are held in a manner like was held in the 9th of August, there is no use to have elections if they can be held in the manner that we experienced on the 9th of August this year.
Are you confident?
We are very confident. I've participated in many petitions. This one, I can tell you, is a bombshell. And we've got so many smoking guns. And I think at the conclusion of this petition, you're going to have a determination in favor of Raila Amolo Odinga.
In English,
Yeah.
so what are some of your prayers? Do you want a rerun, do you want a recount, or do you want nullification of the...
We have got a cocktail of orders that we want from the court, but we could have a rerun if the court so orders, but we think we have circumstances in which the court can actually retally the forms, 34As, 34Bs, and take account and determine the person who really won the elections. And indeed, we want the declaration by Chebukati quashed, and if it is quashed, it means like nothing happened. So the matter can go back to the Electoral Commission, but minus Chebukati. We are accusing Chebukati of criminal conduct, of transgressions that amount to violation of leadership and integrity requirements as spelled out in our constitution. Kwa Kiswahili niseme hivi, tumekuwa na kura tarehe 9 mwezi wa 8 ambayo ilikuwa ni kinyume cha katiba na ya sheria ya Kenya, na kulikuwa na uwizi mkubwa sana, uwizi wa kura katika vituo vya kura, na pia zile form ambazo tunaziita 34A, 34B, wakati zilikuwa zinarushwa kwa mitandao, kwa tallying centers, kulikuwa na uwizi mkubwa sana, na tuna hakika haya yote tukiweka mbele ya koti, uamuzi itatoka kwamba Bwana Ruto hakushinda, na yeye lazima arudishe mahali alipokuwa, na hiyo ni kurudi nyumbani. Asante.
Let's finish the question. Just wait.
We agree.
We just stand by.
Well, now that is exactly what is happening at the Milimani Law Courts there after the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. They filed the presidential petition, and we have been listening to Siaya Governor-elect James Orengo, who is going to be forming the legal team for the petition, a first petition there, and that is, we understand it's a coalition that has also enjoined Raila there and Kalonzo Musyoka. Now we have in studio a lawyer and a political analyst, none other than John Sakwa, to just take us through this conversation. So we've heard what James Orengo has said, legal counsel there, and I'd want to quote him, quote unquote, saying, "I have never seen such a corrupt election such as this." That's what he said. And some of the prayers that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition is focusing on, first of all, he's been asked, are you going for a rerun or a retelling? And he said there are very many orders they're seeking or prayers they're seeking in this particular petition. I'd want us to go with the rerun. What would, likely push for a rerun from the 7-judge bench there? What would...
Thank you so much. I believe that when you look at past decisions from the Supreme Court, you realize that in 2013, the court did not agree with the petitioners, though it made some comments, but it didn't agree with them wholly for them to be able to disparage the elections and call for a repeat election. Now, when you come to 2017, they actually agreed with the petitioners and say that you couldn't determine the winner in this election. And so they set aside the entire decision of IBC and directed for a repeat election. It's incumbent to get the difference between a rerun and a repeat election. First and foremost, a rerun will only happen where you don't have a clear winner, 50 plus 1.
Now, let me interrupt you there and take you back to Milimani Law Courts, where we have Chief Returning Officer Kanchuri there of Azimio la Umoja Kenya, One Kenya Lands, addressing the media.
Ambayo yalikuwa yanaenda mrama kulingana na mambo ambayo tulikuwa tunafuatilia ya kwamba kura yenyewe ilianza kuibiwa kwa polling station, ikaendelea kuibiwa kwa tallying center kule constituencies, na wakati ilifika Bomas, sasa ndio wizi mkubwa zaidi ulifanyika. Na wizi huu ambao ulifanyika Bomas ulikuwa unasimamiwa na Wafula Chebukati mwenyewe. Na ninasema haya nikiwa na ushahidi, maana tuko kotini na tumeweka petition yetu kotini. Kwa hivyo hiyo petition itaonyesha ya kwamba huyu jamaa ambaye anajiita chairman Wafula Chebukati, yeye ni mkora, ni mwizi, ni mtu ambaye hafai hata kidogo kuwa na ofisi ya public office. Na petition yetu pia itaonyesha ya kwamba William Ruto alihusika pia kwa wizi huo, na tuko na ushahidi ya kwamba yeye mwenyewe alihusika. Kulingana na ushahidi inaonyesha vile yeye na Wafula Chebukati waliruhusu maagenti wa UDA kuingia kwa ile server ya IBC na kuweka matokeo yoyote yale ambayo walitaka kuweka. Mambo haya yote yako kwa kesi. Tuko na ushahidi kabambe, tuko na ushahidi wa kutosha ya kwamba William Ruto hakushinda, hata hakuja karibu kushinda kura ambayo ilifanyika, na kwamba kura yenyewe ilikuwa ni kura ambayo haikuwa ya haki, haikuwa ya huru, na ilikuwa ni kura ambayo haikufuata sheria.
Na labda kama tukundi lazimio mnataka nini, kuhesabiwa upya ama mnatakaje?
Tuko na hakika sana, manake hata wakati wameiba walishindwa kuna mambo ambayo walishindwa kubadilisha, na koti ikifuatilia mambo haya, tuko na ile uhakika ya kwamba Raila Odinga atatangazwa ya kwamba yeye ndio alishinda. Na utaona ya kwamba walijaribu kuiba kwa siku 3 mfululizo, na hata baada ya siku 3 mfululizo ile margin ambayo walijaribu ilikuwa ni ndogo sana. Na tukirudisha hiyo mambo yote ambayo imefanyika nyuma, itaonyesha wazi William Ruto alikuwa na kura ndogo sana, kura chache sana, hangeweza kushinda. Kutafanywa kitu inaitwa retally, ambayo ni kuangalia zile documents kwa upya, kuhakikisha ya kwamba yale ambayo yako yani fake ama ni fake inaitwa nini, goshe yale
Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Lands Chief Agent there, Kanchuri, addressing the media at the Milimani Law Courts. Remember, during the verification of the tally at the National Tallying Center, he was part of some leaders who are not satisfied with the process that was taking place at the National Tallying Center, Bomas, and he's been quoted several saying that that was a scene of a crime scene that we've also had being mentioned by legal counsel there, Governor-elect James Orengo there, who's going to be representing the petitioner. Now, we are joined in studio by John Sakwa, who is a lawyer and a political analyst, to just help us demystify what we are seeing and hearing this afternoon. So before we took that particular beat there with Kanchuri, you were explaining the deviations of the 2022 presidential election from the past. Now let's bring in the issue of the respondents versus the petitioners. We are seeing here that Martha Karua and Raila have also filed their own petition, and we're seeing One Kenya Alliance also has its own petition. What are you reading from this?
Definitely, just as I was saying earlier on, that we've had different decisions by the same court, Supreme Court, in regard to different petitions filed over the years, 2013, 2017, now we have 2022. And I think the approach that the Azimio team has taken basically is to try and cover this matter in all angles. And if the document that I've seen is a correct document, I think they have been able to enlist all the other commissioners as interested parties, to give them an opportunity to speak out on their own as to what exactly they feel could have transpired affecting the outcome of the elections. Again, they've been able to list the respondent as Wafula Chebukati in his own individual capacity. So you can tell that they're trying to zero in on his actions and not on the entire IEBC, because the IEBC, as we speak, is a split organization as we speak right now. It's an institution that is not speaking in concordance. They're actually split. And now, I think the strategy that Azimio One Kenya Alliance is trying to come up with is to split up all these different individuals so as, according to them, the truth may finally come out. And IEBC have equally been sued as the respondents. So whatever IEBC will try to front as perhaps from our end, the elections were superb, we did it, it was extremely transparent, there'll be definitely that position will be rebutted by the interested parties. And once that comes before the floor of the court, then the court will want now to get into the nitty-gritties of what actually transpired at Bomas.
So this particular dissent between the IEBC, the 4 IEBC commissioners, vis-a-vis now the commission itself, because we find ourselves, I think Wafula Chebukati is finding himself on one end of the table while the rest of the 4 are seated, though the rest of the 2 are quite quiet, who did not take sides here. Yes. But this dissent within IEBC, is it grounds really to have this election invalidated? Going by, IEBC has been fully promising Kenyans that this is going to be a transparent and fair process.
Definitely, I've heard from some quarters that the power to, the authority actually to announce the winner is basically within the confines of the chair. But it doesn't happen that way. The chair is not an island. Otherwise, then we'll have had an IBC just considered by one person. Why have the rest of the commissioners? The truth is that whatever process that IBC undertakes, all this process they're all enjoined. That's why it's called the commission. It is a commission of commissioners who basically have the same mind towards addressing a particular issue, and that is the entire election process of this country. And so trying to say that the Chebukati, the chair, can just arise with whatever figures and read out to the nation and declare who the winner is, that is wrong, because the whole of this entire process must be synchronized in a manner which is agreeable even with the IBC, with the rest of the IBC commissioners. Otherwise, we'll be reducing the IBC commissioners to basically flower girls and flower boys, guys who are just there to escort the chair. Yeah.
Now, before we get back to that, what you're seeing on your screen is pictures from the KICC, the International Convention Center there, where we understand that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya leaders, including Raila and Martha Karua, are headed there from the Milimani courts, and we're expecting that they're going to be addressing the media. That's why we're seeing that particular shot on your screen there. We are discussing what has just transpired 30-40 minutes ago there, and this is in regards to the filing of the presidential petition to just better understand what are the prayers, what are the grounds, will they hold water. 4 days for the petitioners to actually respond, be served and respond, and we'll be waiting to see. They can either do that, they can be served online or even physically or manually if you like, and they can respond, file their responses even online. So Chebukati, the issue of the IEBC, it's seemingly IEBC versus or the IEBC for versus now Chebukati. He seems to have found himself in a crook scare. If we go by what legal counsel James Orengo there has said, that in the event, some of the prayers that Azimio is seeking is they want the declaration of President-elect William Ruto quashed. And this, what will that mean? I think it means that nothing has happened and that we go back to the IEBC. The same IEBC that has an issue, but they go further to say, we will go back to IEBC in the absence of Wafula Chebukati, who is a chair. The dynamics.
Yeah. I think from what I heard from James Orengo is that they have a myriad of prayers. I haven't looked at the prayers, but from where I sit, I can try and gauge out that when they say that they want the seemingly election of William Ruto as the president-elect to be invalidated, they basically mean that first and foremost, that if the court can agree with them that either the entire electionary process was wrong, then what they'll be seeking is perhaps to go back for a further or rather a new election.
A rerun.
A rerun is only when 50 plus one has not been met.
So this is an entirely new process.
And the rerun is just limited to the number
president.
1 and number 2. But now, if the entire election is set aside, then even Wajakoya, Mweure, all of these people will participate,
including the members of parliament, governors, senators, and everyone.
No, just for the presidency. Just for the presidency. So we are not looking at a rerun. We're basically looking at one, perhaps the entire the presidential election being repeated afresh. Or the other thing I think they're seeking is this: if the court can agree with them that there was a problem, perhaps arithmetical issues, that somebody somewhere has tried to star feed numbers to show that William Ruto has won. But in truth, it's Raila Odinga who won, subtracting or by removing those numbers or giving the right numbers to Odinga. Then they will want this court just to declare that Raila Odinga's team actually won the presidential election.
Yes.
So we are looking at those two scenarios. Then remember, he said that even if you are to go back to another repeat election, it must be done minus Wafula Chebukati, because they say that he must have oversaw some sort of a criminal enterprise in regard to rigging of these elections. So again, I don't know what kind of prayer they put there. Perhaps is that a new chair, by whatever process, be appointed to be able now to actually to oversee a repeat election should the court agree that Kenya goes through a repeat election.
A delicate balance there, because I'm thinking if the petitioners, the petitioners there go for the fact that we cannot verify the results here because there's been an issue of the 0.1% matrix, that arithmetic was not adding up, the opaqueness, we had that. If they go and they say that they have to draw a balance when it comes to the verification, because then it will also come back to bite them. If they say they cannot verify, then they still want their client to be pronounced the winner. That's quite going to be a delicate balance there. The verification aspect.
I don't know whether it's about the verification per se, because I think what that's trying to say is that the person who's declared the winner was not the winner. You understand? Yeah. From where they are, Raila Odinga is the winner. So I don't know in their petition whether they're coming up with a module of explaining how then Raila is the winner and why this other President-elect Ruto is not the winner. If they can satisfy the court that when you add this and this and this, you get this and this is the winner, then the court may not necessarily say go back to a repeat election. The court can, if it's quite apparent to the face of the record that Raila had 60 votes and Ruto had 40, then he's a winner. Or Ruto had 60, Raila remains with 40, they'll still uphold Ruto's win. Yeah, so, but where you can't understand how Raila reached the 60 or how Ruto then reached the 40, then the court will then be able to say, no, let's go back and do the right thing, so that a winner is visibly seen to be the winner without interruptions.
The mathematics. Before we get back to this particular conversation, we take you back to Milimani Law Courts, where we have our reporter, Sarafina Ruby, with the latest updates. Good afternoon, Sarafina. Well, Sarafina, kindly bring us up to speed with what has been happening there at the Milimani Law Courts. Remember, we have been keenly watching, not just here back at home, but also across the region and globally, having made history in 2017 with the nullification, the first ever across the African continent. Kenya made history, so today there's a lot of focus on Kenya itself, and especially the judiciary, waiting for the timelines there that are given at 2 p.m. To have the presidential petition filed, and we have seen that successfully take place at the Milimani Law Courts. Sarafina Robi will be joining us in not too long to just tell us how the atmosphere is looking like. We've already seen that on our screens, that we had supporters of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya there had flocked the area to just show their support for their preferred presidential candidate. We also heard from lawyer James Orengo, who is the governor-elect Siaya. They're just trying to put into perspective the petition, as it were, and some of the prayers that they will be seeking. Remember, we are yet to have the full document there. It has just been lodged, and we also, as the petitioners, we expect they're going to be served there, either online or physically, so to speak. And he was open to say that if a rerun is offered, or rather ordered by the court, they are ready to participate. They're also calling for a retelling and, you know, the declaration being quashed. But in the event that it comes back to the IEBC, then it is with in the absence of the chair, Wafula Chebukati there, who also is part of the petitioners there. In himself, he has also been served as an individual, not just as the IEBC. Now let's bring it back to you, Wakili. Would you term the IEBC in its current state at this point as dysfunctional?
Yes or no? One, in regard to the presidential elections, we have seen the breakup. But with regard to these other elections, or these other positions, we are yet to see any sort of breakaway. And remember, the 4 IEBC commissioners who did not agree with Wafula Chebukati did not proceed and resign. They're still within the IEBC and performing their functions as commissioners, just the way we've observed at Bomas. Mm-hmm. They're there for the purposes of giving directions as to the Mombasa and Kakamega gubernatorial by-elections. Remember, initially that said, in fact, the issue of postponing these elections, we were not even consulted. Chebukati just rose up and said, we are postponing this for a further date to a period that is not known. And then they say, no, we were not even a part of it. Today, they've been made a part of whatever decisions or directions that were given in regard to the 2 gubernatorial elections. And so you find out that, yes, in regard to the presidential election, the IEBC is not reading from the same script. But perhaps in regard to these other positions, the IEBC has attempted or has tried to show that they're acting in consonance. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But will that suffice? Remember, perception and the conversation out here is that they are of divergent view. But we will look into that even as we speak matters of quorum. Now we have Roby on standby. Good afternoon, Roby. Just bring us up to speed with the latest from Milimani Courts. Good afternoon. Well, it seems Roby is yet to get in touch with us. Remember, she's been keeping tabs on what has been happening. We have her online. Good afternoon, Roby.
Indeed, thank you, Regina. We're coming to you live from where the Supreme Court is now operating from, which is the Milimani Law Court, whereby today we were expecting presidential election petitions to be filed, given that today is the deadline and the completion of the 7-day required by the Constitution. And as of today, we've been able to see at least 3 petitions that have been filed here at the Supreme Court, which is based now at the Milimani Law Court. The first petition that was filed was that of John and Njoroge Kamau, and later on we were able to see another petition that is filed by Khalif Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Mumbi, and Grace Makao. And the third one that they've just left a minute ago was that one that has been filed by Azimio la Umoja, Raila Odinga, as well as his deputy Martha Karua. And they were here just a few minutes ago presenting the petition, as well as 39 boxes of supporting affidavit in regards to that petition. Now, what we've been able to realize out of all the petitions that have been filed, one of the key aspects that comes out is that they are disputing the results that were announced on Monday by the IEBC chair, Wafula Chebukati, saying that there were a lot of illegalities and irregularities in the whole process, as well as in the results that were announced. And now they're seeking the intervention of the Supreme Court to make a determination on that, whereby earlier on we were able to speak also to Senior Counsel James Orengo, who says that some of the things they look up to or into the petition include the transmission of the results from the polling stations, from the tallying centers, as well as the technology involvement in all these, whereby they claim that some of the fake forms 34A and 34B, as well as the 34C that were being announced, they dispute the results that were on those forms, as well as they say that they also look into the involvement of the Venezuelans who were in the country prior to the elections. And some of the other things that they look into is that they seek for the retallying of the votes that were counted and verified and declared. So they seek a retallying of that, saying that what was announced was not what was expected or what should have been followed. The whole process was faulty. And now they seek the retallying of the votes, and they're also saying that if the Supreme Court finds it fit to nullify the whole process, then they are also okay with that. Also able to speak to one of the chief agents of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, who is Saitaboa Olekanchori, who was able to tell us that we asked him why he said when we were in Bomas, why he was able to go up there and say that that was a criminal sin, and he got to tell us that what they were able to establish and what they continue to dispute from that is that the fact that some of the things that were happening there during the whole process included some of the things that were happening at the Bomas included the colluding of the IEBC officials with the Kenya Kwanza people who were there at the Bomas of Kenya, and that's why he went ahead in front of the tallying center where the chair Wafula Chebukati was declaring the results and said that it was a crime scene. So we also asked them whether they're seeking to instigate any criminal petitions against the chair Wafula Chebukati. They say they're going to look into that, because what he did was unfair, and even the results that were declared were not fair. He was also able to tell us that they look forward to some of the irregularities that were experienced from the polling centers to be addressed by the Supreme Court. Now, given that they have filed this petition alongside 2 other petitioners, now this means that they've set the ball rolling for the hearing of this matter. Now, having filed the petition, they have up to 24 hours to get to serve their respondents, include the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, the chair Wafula Chebukati, as well as the Kenya Kwanza Brigade led by William Ruto. Now, upon serving the respondents within 24 hours, now the respondents have up to 4 days to get to respond to the petition. And thereafter, the petitioners have 1 day to get to file any interlocutory applications in regards to this petition. And thereafter, any person seeking to be enjoined in this petition as a friend of the court, who is an amicus curiae or any amici, if there are many, then they have 1 day from the filing of the petition to get to. They have up to 1 day from the filing of the petition to get to file their application, and therefore, thereafter, if the Supreme Court considers it, then they will be enjoined in the petition. Thereafter, there will be a conference set up to just determine how the hearing will be conducted, and immediately after that, then the hearing will kick off. After the hearing is completed, then they have up to 14 days to get to determine and give a judgment in regards to this petition. We've been able to see a couple of lawyers appear here for the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya to represent Raila Odinga and Senior Counsel Martha Karua, and we expect more from the other parties to get to arrive. We have been able to see a number of lawyers who were even in the previous presidential election petitions 2017. Key among them we expect to see from the other parties, for instance, the IEBC, whereby we saw Githu Muigai. Githu Muigai will be representing the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, will be leading a group of lawyers who will be representing the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. In 2017, he was one of the amicus curiae in the presidential election petition. That is a friend of the court, but this time he'll be representing one of the parties in the petition. So it will be very interesting to get to see how this is going to pan out. And we have also seen a couple of other lawyers who were in the 2017 election petitions, including James Orengo here, leading a very large group of lawyers who are representing Azimio la Umoja One Kenya. So we get to follow up from here, and also we've spoken to the commandant of the police who is in charge of security for the judiciary, who is Lazarus Opicho, and he's been able to tell us that now today we saw a big crowd of Kenyans who showed up, most of them being supporters of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, appear here. They were able to cause a little fracas, but they were contained by security inside the tent. Now we're able to speak to the police commandant, who says now that when the hearing kicks off, the only people who will be allowed inside the hearing hall, which is the ceremonial hall here at the Milimani Law Courts, are the lawyers as well as media and the petitioners. Now, members of the public will not be allowed inside the ceremonial hall here at the Milimani Law Courts. Now, we will keep following up to see anything that follows up. Also, given that Kenya Kwanza has 4 days to get to respond to the petition, now we'll be looking forward to see when they will appear, or they'll be able to come here to present their responses. Now, back to you, Regina.
Thank you very much, Robbie, for that detailed executive summary of what has been happening at the Milimani Law Courts there, where the Supreme Court is going to be operating from. And as you heard, journalists and lawyers are going to be granted access to Milimani Courts. However, members of the public will be locked out of that session, and that's why the media, especially KBC Channel 1, is going to be bringing you the live proceedings. Then 4 days there for the petitioners there to file their responses in regard to that particular petition. Now, bring it back to you, Swaka. The issue of IEBC is going to greatly play out at the floor of the House, and we've seen there. However, there are no criminal charges that have been filed against Wafula Chebukati. However, some hearing from take home from Orengo saying that in the event that the court orders are rerun, they do not want that issue. They do not want Wafula Chebukati anywhere in regard to the role of the Electoral Commission. What happens? What does the law say? Can the IEBC operate in the absence of a chair, being that the chair is the official RO for the presidential candidate?
We are likely to see two situations play out. First and foremost, it's not incumbent upon Orengo to say Wafula Chebukati not to oversee another election, but it should be a process or a finding of the court. Should the court be inclined to actually form an opinion that the chair of the IEBC actually bungled the election, then definitely it will be pointless to actually say that the same person to oversee a repeat election, yet the court has already castigated him. So first and foremost, the court has the power to actually then order otherwise and say, listen, let us find positions or a scenario where even if there's an interim chair, even if there's somebody who will come on an interim capacity just for purposes of overseeing these repeat elections, well and good. Number two, then who is the vice chair? Is she able to then oversee the elections in the absence of the chair? Because if you get into the process of appointing a chair of the IEBC as the law dictates, it may not be feasibly possible before a repeat election is held. Remember, the law is clear that it has to be held within 60 days from the pronouncement of the Supreme Court. Yes.
Now, I wanted to bring out that issue of so who takes over in the event that the court finds it deemed that the chair has questions to answer in regard to bungling the election there. I see a vacuum, so to speak, because if we go back to the Minor Kiai 2017 case that has been greatly mentioned, not just here, but also when other analysts were having that conversation, where the law itself is very clear as to who is the official returning officer for the, and now we find that this person is culpable of electoral malpractices. And others will also argue that the vice chair, Juliana Cherera, also somewhat lost confidence. You know, there's been a lot of talk. Are we seeing, I think that's an area that the court really needs to...
Yeah, and that's what I said now. The court must pronounce itself on that particular issue. Because on one hand, if you say Chebukati goes back, yet you've actually reprimanded him and said he bungled, nobody will have faith in the process. Remember, the reason why NASA boycotted the 2017 repeat elections, they cited reasons that what the Supreme Court directed the IEBC to do prior to conducting a repeat election was not adhered to. So if you were to go back and repeat an election before the same IEBC without making the amends as directed by the Supreme Court, will be an exercise in futility, because we'll just be repeating the same mistake.
The same thing. Then there's the issue of time, chronos. We do not have time. The Supreme Court does not have time, constitutionally given the timelines it cannot operate on. Very constitutional now, they have 14 days. And looking at the possible options, or rather that the Supreme Court will be pronouncing itself. First, the issue of either nullifying or upholding the election. Then there's a question of the retelling. Do you think it will be possible for the Supreme Court to actually oversee the retelling of these particular forms that are among the prayers that the respondents have put forth?
That's why it's called the Supreme Court. And one of the functions of the Supreme Court, actually one of the primary duties of the Supreme Court, is to entertain, hear, and determine a presidential petition. And when a presidential petition comes, you can't choose. The Supreme Court doesn't have the luxury of choosing which elements of the petition would they be able to adhere to, and which ones would they not be able to embrace or to adhere to. So once it's the Supreme Court of Kenya, in fact, its primary duty is to actually be able to step into presidential election disputes, and bring some sort of clarity and sense. And so they are well capacitated to basically be able to deal with the issue even of retallying. They ought to be able to deal with those issues, because then if they are not able to, then who? Because it is the only institution that has both the constitutional and the legal mandate to actually hear out all the parties concerned. Remember, Kenya Kwanza and IEBC are yet to put in their own responses. Maybe today, after Azimio has been able to rack in their petition, they may actually seem to maybe even have a stronger case. Remember, the other side is allowed to come and rebut it. So we have not seen anything yet. So they must rise up to the capacity to actually go through the entire evidence that Azimio side has actually presented, and also go through the respondents, and actually make a very, very informed decision. So I don't actually envy their position as it were.
It's quite the hot seat for the 7-bench judge bench there, led by Martha Fome there. Now, talking about time, I still want to get back to that because we have had conversations from some members of LSK saying that the timelines are too close within the provisions of the Constitution. 14 days, it's not enough. And I'm here wondering, in the event of a retailing, are we going to be retailing just, is it all the 46,229 Form 34As, or are we going to go for the 290 Form 34Bs in terms of if we are retailing or the timelines?
The election actually is in Form 34A.
True.
Because Form 34B and C, they're just replicas.
True.
Of Form 34A. So we must go back to the 49,000 plus. And you cannot say, let us only retally 2 constituencies or 3 constituencies. He who loses or who fails they're against him will not want that, will want the entire tally. Remember, for the presidential vote to determine who the president is not only about 1 or 2 or 3 constituencies. Then we must start from square one, go all the way up to the 49, whatever. The tallying must be in totality. So as then again we don't open up another war front and say, listen, if others had been tallied, the difference would not have been what the Supreme Court came up with.
Now, let's go back in history. 2013, 2017, we saw presidential petitions there. And what is in 2013, they went after the difference in the vote. 2017, we saw somewhat a purpose, a petition driven towards the process. And we had our first ever nullification here in Africa that was soon followed in 2020 by Morocco there. But now, we are here in this 2022 situation, and we are seeing a mix. Are you expecting a focus on the numbers, given that it was a tightly contested election, or are we going to see a more focused petition towards the process, given the pronouncement that we've just had in person by one of the legal counsel?
It's quite clear that the process affects the numbers. So the wrong process adopted, the numbers will be different. The right process perhaps adopted, the numbers will be different. So much as we're looking at the process, they'll eventually affect the numbers. Because the arguments will be, listen, the process was infiltrated, giving this kind of figures to this, giving this kind of figures to this. The correct figures, as per our tally, without the infiltration, is this. So they'll have to then interrogate the process. Was the process above board? Was the process legal? Was the process transparent? Was the process clean? Was there any interference? If not, then show us then. If the process was quite substantive and okay, then the figures are fine. But if the process truly was compromised at one point or another, then it will affect the eventual or the finality of the figures. Yeah.
Now, coming to the process, the IEBC, we've even had Justice Nyagaya, ICT manager, IEBC, or rather in charge of ICT, coming out and saying that they noticed infiltration of their systems. However, they did not come out clean and say exactly who tried to hack the IEBC system. Are you likely to see this question or rather this panning out at the courts?
Yeah, of course. There is the court relies also on admissions, where IEBC have actually come out and say, listen, our systems were hacked, or there was an attempted hacking, whether it was not productive or not. Then they have to also display that kind of evidence, because at least they're acknowledging there was an attempted hack. So we don't know by whom, whether the people within the country or party members. It could be from either side, but they should be able to demonstrate to what extent did the firewall around their servers and around their systems actually protect them, or was there actually an infiltration? Yeah.
Now, also the process there and the manner in which the IEBC chair, Wafula Chebukati, made the declaration for the president-elect there. There are some who have poked hole on the issue of lacking quorum, or that quorum at IEBC at that moment, at that particular moment, was not constitutionally right, or rather did not have the requisite numbers, given 3, but now the constitution says the minimal number is 3. But now let's look at the Electoral Commission. There are 7 commissioners, 4 were missing in action, 3 remain behind.
Again, the law actually does not actually say how many should be present when it's declared. What the law says is that he is the national returning officer in respect to presidential, the presidential tally and to the declaration of the presidential elections. He is the national returning officer. But it doesn't say at the time of him declaring, he has to be surrounded by 7, 8, 10 commissioners. That is true.
So was he well within the law to make that declaration?
The only challenge that he faces within the law is this, that even as you're declaring those results, whether there are 7 of them or 3 of them, were those results agreeable to the rest of the commissioners? Is it a tally that was actually arrived at by the IEBC, or is it a tally that was arrived by chairman by his own, in his own individual capacity? Because the issue here is those results, were they being declared in his individual capacity as a chair, or were the results a part of what had been processed by the entire commission to lend credence to his actual proclamation that indeed here are the results? So that is where the question of law will be telling.
In regard to the 4 commissioners who gave a dissenting, what dissent, or rather did not agree with the results that were declared, was there another option for them to actually, come out and pinpoint this? Or could we only have it through a presser? Was there another way to seek redress in the matter?
From what I heard, and I believe all this will end up in the affidavits, from what I heard from them is that they tried to actually have the chair come on board. They tried to reach him out. They tried to have some sort of repair or postmortem of what was coming in, and trying to look at, are these the actual results? Is there an infiltration? What is happening? But from what they say is that the chair actually overruled them, did not give them an ear, did not want to hear them out, did not want to participate in what they had raised, and they were left with no alternative but to do a presser and distance themselves from what was about to be announced at Bomas and say, listen, whatever will be announced, we were not a part of it. Let it be known to the world. Though, by doing a presser, you're just maybe basically informing the public, but it's in no capacity a legal position. So their legal position now will be addressed in court. And that is why I believe they've been enjoined as interested parties. So as then, whatever evidence they have as to what could have affected the end tally can be reduced into an affidavit, which can be tested in law, and which, of course, the courts will have the opportunity to actually look at and make a determined pronunciation based on legal principles. So, and I believe that's why they have been enjoined as interested parties to be able now to use a legal platform to now channelize their position.
Now, talking about ethics and moral grounding at that point, and looking at the situation, the country was very anxious, anticipating the declaration. Do you think it was right for them to address the citizens, or rather the voters, in such a manner? Would you tell me it's responsible?
It is within their rights, because they are Kenyans. Remember, IEBC, so much Kenyans just like you and I. Wafula Chebukati is equally a Kenyan. So where they felt like we cannot embrace this position, I think from where I see, they had all the right to actually come and actually shed light on what they think is amiss, on what they think is being done wrong, and on what they think is right. Just the same way, I think Wafula was able to send out presser later on and say, listen, these gentlemen I think ladies, this is what they wanted. He also came out
through the
he didn't keep quiet about it. You understand? So I believe the all Kenyans are better explanation than just they're doing the presses, and that's why now we have this particular matter before the court, where then they'll not only be doing the presses, but whatever you say must be backed with solid, substantive evidence, which can actually now help not only the courts but the entire country.
You've mentioned, Wakili, earlier there that also the court bases itself on pronouncements. And I'd want to go back to, I think, Sunday, thereabout, where Wafula Chebukati was doing his brief, and he went further to mention that so far the voter turnout was around 65%, and around 84 constituencies use the manual register. The issue of the manual register, and this has put to the question, where are the votes? And where are the votes, or rather the numbers of those who participated in this process using the manual register? From your legal understanding, where does this put the numbers and the figures vis-a-vis the pronouncements from the courts before the election and the actual use of the manual register?
Yeah. You know, that is why there's a feeling that the entire process was shrouded in some sort of mystery, because even the pronouncements of the chair himself were not tallying with the finality in terms of the figures that he was trying to raise out there as the people who basically cast their vote. Remember, initially, there's a mere coalition. There's a mere coalition had actually pressed for a manual register, whereas the Kenya Kwanza coalition had actually pressed for reliance on the electronic register. Remember, our election process, our voting process, the real casting of ballot is done manually. But it is only the identification and the transmission that is electronic. The Court of Appeal, just on the eve of the elections, came up with a ruling, but the ruling did not stop the use of manual register. It only said where, in cases, and there will not be many cases, but in cases where the electronic register is unable to function, and the identification of the voters is quite difficult or impossible, then it laid out what to do. It said, now go to step 2, identify them using their ID cards, feed them into the KIMS, and if not possible, then now let's go to the manual register. So the manual register was actually allowed. The use of the manual register was actually allowed. So what Chebukati and his team ought to have done, basically, is to incorporate everybody who was electronically identified, manually identified, those who did their stuff manually, like I think McQueen was affected and some parts of Kakamega, and I think Garissa. They should form the entire part of the turnout, the people who came out to actually vote. So as the percentage figure is equally correct. But I think initially I'd say this figure only reflects those who are electronically identified, and it does not incorporate the people who are manually identified and proceeded to vote. So, and that is why there are a lot of cries that the exact figure is shrouded in mystery. You can't tell who won. You can't, the figures that were allocated to this person are not the right figures. So IBC have been enlisted as respondents, and so they'll be able to come and make that position clear vis-a-vis the statement that had earlier on come from them in regard to the voter turnout and the final tally and the distribution of votes between the first 2 leading candidates. Yeah.
Now, we expect a showdown, and this is where, by default, we all become amicus.
Yes.
We'll get to learn some legalese, and we watch that, and the media is there to actually give and afford that coverage. Now, let's look at the teams that both sides have assembled, and maybe you can tell us what we should expect. We have from Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition, we have a team of senior counsels that include Feroz Nwiji, James Orengo there, Philip Murgo, Professor Tom Ujenda Otiende Amolo, Professor Ben Sihanya, Paul Mwangi, Tom Masharia, and Jackson Awele. being a lawyer yourself, tell us, what should we expect from that particular team?
No, Jackson Awell is quite good in drafting. I think most of the paperwork, we know Rengo is good in his oratory skills. Same to Otenda Molo. Mugo is equally good. And Paul Mwangi is quite good in drafting. And I mean, he's been around Raila Odinga for a while. And he basically, the good thing about him, he understands both the political aspect and now the legal aspect. He can be used as a conduit to actually, because remember he was also one of the agents of Raila Odinga in the presidential tallying center that is at Bomas. So looking at that team again is not their first time to appear before the Supreme Court. Look at Professor Ojenda. He had done several matters before the Supreme Court. They have both the skill and the legal depth, and also the political acumen to be able to maybe pass their point across. And remember, the Supreme Court will not allow all of those people to argue or to bring about their points, because then they have very limited time.
Yes.
So I believe what the court does is to allocate every time each side, and then within that time, you can now spread the time among yourselves. So that if you have 3 hours, then you know we'll do for 40, 45, whatever. You cover all the areas, but within a specific time. And each one of them, I believe, will be able to pick up a particular point which they feel they're very good in, and they're able to express it.
Yeah. Now let's look at the other team, the Kenya Kwanza team, senior counsel. We also have Kioko Kilukumi, Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, Professor Kithure Kindiki, Dr. Muthomi Thianklu, Elisha Ogoy, my goodness, Katwa Kigan, Hilary Sigei, Abraham Singoy, and Omwanza Ombati. What is your take in regard to the constitution of that particular team?
It's really good. I believe Kilukumi has been around for a while. I heard Amenase may not be coming, so I don't know how true. Because of conflict of interest, having acted for President Uhuru Kenyatta before when there were buddies with Ruto. So I don't know how true, but Ngati is quite seasoned. He's been before. He's done these petitions before, and I believe it's equally a good team. And the most important thing is not even the teams that are representing the various parties. The most important thing when it comes to this kind of petition is what kind of evidence
do you have?
You know, you may have been there for a while. You may be good in whatever you're doing, but the court wants to look at the evidence. Give us the evidence that the electioneering process was a farce. AIBC gave us evidence that you rose to the occasion.
Now, Wakili, let's hear what Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition leader, their flag bearer, Raila Odinga, has to say. This is a KICC. Now let's have a listen in.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a statement to release as the leadership of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya movement, following the filing of the presidential election petition at the Supreme Court of Kenya today, August 22nd, 2022. A short while ago, we successfully filed our presidential election petition at the Supreme Court of Kenya. The action we have taken is perfectly in line with the stipulations of our Constitution on resolving electoral disputes. It affirms our deep belief in constitutionalism, the rule of law, and a peaceful resolution of disputes, including high-stakes ones, like the presidential election. We have been shocked that as we prepare to go to court, others tried to stop us. Kenyans and all those who followed our campaign will recall that fighting and ending corruption in Kenya was a core agenda throughout our campaign as Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party. The presidential election results announced last week represent that continuing struggle, pitting the forces for democracy and good governance against the corruption cartels that are so determined that they will stop at nothing to take control of the government in this country. This is a do-or-die battle for the corruption cartels who have everything to lose should the forces of democracy take over. The corruption cartels are prepared to compromise electoral systems, bribe electoral officials, make security systems look other way, or even kill in order to find their way to power and their ill-gotten wealth and continue stealing from the public. We believe this is what happened in this election. For the sake of Kenya's future, the corruption network must not only be stopped, it must also be crushed. This attempted takeover of the country in this election has not been an isolated phenomenon. It has been in the works every election cycle. The corruption cartel has been intruding into our elections by not only financing specific candidates, but also by threatening or assassinating candidates and election officials. The corruption cartels have steadily been moving into manipulating electoral demands and suppressing the participation of voters who support rival political formations. Their activities that make it clear voters and votes do not matter have progressively reduced voter turnout in Kenya. At times, the cartels have triggered intense conflict between security forces and themselves as they strive to compromise elections. Slowly but steadily, these forces are killing our hard-won democracy and are trying to return Kenya into a one-party state in their own interests. You have seen the speed with which they have moved to buy elected leaders just within 1 week. After being denied the numbers at lower levels elections, like members of the National Assembly, members of the county assemblies, and governors, these corruption cartels are working and buying leaders who have been elected on other parties' tickets to kill our democracy and also make the work of containing corruption at lower levels equally less effective. All these efforts have important political costs for our country, and they should not be underestimated. The corruption cartels know there are multiple benefits for them if they take over. Their members dealing in illegal drugs will thrive through greater ease in the transportation and distribution of drugs throughout the country. They will access intelligence information for more corruption. They will gain protection from the police for their leaders and their illegal activities. They will institute weaker or no restrictions at all for the money laundering, and they will ensure nobody else but them thrive. This potential array of favors for the cartels makes the capturing of government a profitable do-or-die venture for them. But it marks the beginning of the end of Kenya as we know it today. No nation once captured by cartels, whether they be corruption cartels, drug cartels, gun-running cartels, or terror cartels, ever thrived or realized its full potential. The 2022 presidential election represents the most daring move by that cartel to overturn the wishes of the electorate. We refuse to allow Kenya to go that direction. It must not happen, and it will not happen. This is what the steps we have taken today and the ones we will take going forward are all about. To stop the corruption cartels from getting to the heart of our nation and government, the presidency, and to stop the corruption cartels from jeopardizing electoral health and democracy in our country. Otherwise, we'll have no country. Our supporters deserve the support of all our citizens and all the citizens and leaders of the world who believe in democracy, constitutionalism, and the rule of law. This is the time to walk the talk. And I want to add, nitasema kichache kwa Kiswahili. Leo tumefikisha kesi yetu mbele ya mahakama kuu taifa letu juu ya yale janga ambayo imefanyika katika uchaguzi ambayo tumefanya wiki mbili iliyopita. Tuna hakika ya kwamba tuko na ushahidi wa kutosha ya kuonyesha kwamba sisi ndio tulishinda uchaguzi huu. Imedhihirika wazi baada ya sisi kufanya uchunguzi na wale wengine ambaye walishiriki katika hiyo ulaghai kujitokeza kama Wakenya kusema maovu imefanyika hapa, sisi wenyewe tuliitwa, tulipwa pesa, lakini tuko tayari kutoa ushahidi, na shahidi yuko hapa. Yale ambayo imedhihirika siku hizi chache ambayo imepita ni kitu ambaye inaweza kuandikwa katika historia ya siku zijazo. Hatukukuwa hata na uchaguzi ambayo mtu anaweza kufurahia. Wale walanguzi, wawezi walikuwa wamo ndani ya kule ukumbi kule Bomas of Kenya. Hapo walikuwa wanabadilisha matokeo kutoka eneo moja na eneo lingine hapo na wanaingiza huko. Ukiona yale maovu walifanya siku hizo unaweza kushangaa. Na vile vile wakuu wa tume ya uchaguzi ukaongoza Samaha. Tumesema ushahidi tuko nazo ya kutosha kuonyesha yale maovu yalifanyika. Na tumesema vile vile hata wakuu wafanyikazi wa tume ya uchaguzi wakaongozwa na yule mwenyekiti wao walifanya maovu mengi zaidi. Ukiona mwenyekiti mwenyewe akitofautiana na wanachama wake na kutangaza hata kama ma constituencies 31 kutoka yao yalikuwa hajawekwa pale, na aibu kubwa kwa demokrasia ya Kenya. Lakini tunatoa shukrani kwa Wakenya kwa kusimama imara na vile vile kuonyesha utulivu wakati huu. Tunasema Wakenya wangoje wawe na subira Maana yake tunasema subira huvuta heri. Tuna hakika ya kwamba mwishowe ukweli itajulikana, na hiyo ukweli itapata sisi huru. Kwa hivyo sisi nasema asanteni sana Wakenya wote pale kila mahali mko, hata marafiki wetu kutoka ng'ambo ambayo wako hapa. Tungependa kuwasihi wawe na subira, wasijiingize katika mambo ya siasa ya kindani ya Kenya. Wache Wakenya masuluhishe mambo yao kama Wakenya, na sisi tunaweza kusuluhisha mambo yetu. Asanteni sana, Mungu awabariki, Mungu ibariki Kenya. Asante sana.
Presidential flag bearer under the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition, there Raila Amolo Odinga addressing members of the public, the media, as well as leaders under the coalition. They're farming up and saying that what we have seen at the Milimani Law Courts this afternoon, where the Azimio One Kenya coalition successfully filed a presidential petition. They're saying that the action was in line with the Constitution and issues around the election disputes process. He also further went on to admit that indeed this was a high-stake election, and picking from what he also pointed out is that he alleged that quote-unquote shocked that others tried to stop them. We are going to see clarity in regard to what exactly he meant in that particular statement. But I'm joined in studio, still here with us in studio is none other than John Sako, who's just going to help us unpack that statement by Raila Amolo Odinga. He says it is a do or die battle.
I think what he means here is that it is either we get to know what happened and then structures are put in place to avoid a repetition of such an occurrence, or for Kenyans basically not to see any change and to lose hope completely in the entire election process.
Something also that Raila has mentioned is that, he has gone further. Allegations of interference of the systems, corruption, bribery of commissions, as well as an attempted takeover of the country. And this has went further and said that this is not a one-day affair. This has been cyclic every 5 years, and that corruption cartels are out to suppress the will of the voters.
Definitely. What he's trying to say is basically that if the will of the voters cannot be ascertained, then somebody else's will be upheld. And what he's basically saying is that if voters came out to vote and they wanted X, then they are given perhaps Y. Then Y has imposed himself over the voters. Mm-hmm. And so the cartels, what he's trying to say is that the cartels have taken over, or they have attempted to take over the sovereign will of the Kenyan people. Because he's saying, if you are losing an election, then lose it transparently, lose it fairly. Whoever is winning, let him win transparently and fairly, because that demonstrates the will of the Kenyan people. But where the will of the Kenyan people does not mirror the final results, then they mirror something else. And those are the cartels. And those cartels have a mission. Those cartels have an agenda. And the agenda basically is now maybe to rule over the country and maybe do whatever they want, or whatever the agenda is. Yeah.
Talking about agendas, also Raila has pointed out to killing democracy, killing multi-partyism, so to speak. These forces are killing democracy, buying elected voters at the National Assembly. This is a clear jab at President-elect William Ruto there, because we have been seeing elected leaders actually decamping to Kenya Kwanza.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, they're still in that, wrestling mode. Just, elections are about wrestling one side and the other. And according to him, as long as the clear winner is yet to be ascertained, and he believes that he's a clear winner, and through William Ruto's overtures, he has been declared the winner as opposed to him, then he feels that this and other things that have been happening prior to the elections and after the elections are cognizance of the fact that democracy is being hammered, democracy is being fought, and that the end effect will be that the gains that have been made over the years and ages for us to have this democratic space, and for us to enjoy whatever conduits of democracy that we are seeing or that we're supposed to be enjoying, then something needs to be done. Because according to him and according to where he's standing, even as he gave that speech, that the will of the Kenyan people is yet to be reflected, not only in this election, but in perhaps in 2017, going backwards. So a time has come for us to stop this cycle of perhaps going into an election, disputing the results, going back to the Supreme Court maybe annulling the elections. That cycle of, there is something that always happens in our elections which does not mirror the will of the people, that cases must end up in court, and then the court must come up with a decision in one way or another. He's saying that we want to have a Kenya where when you go to election, the will of the people is confirmed, addressed, and people move on.
Yeah. We have been speaking to lawyer John Swaka there, who is not only a lawyer but also a political analyst, to understand what has happened this afternoon at the Milimani courts, where the Supreme Court is going to be operating from for the next 14 days as Kenyans wait to hear their determination. The 7-judge bench there, led by Chief Justice Martha Koome. What we know for now is that whatever outcome comes after 14 days, it's indeed going to change the dynamics of Kenya's political scene, and we will be there as KBC Channel 1 to bring you the live broadcast of that particular court proceedings. I'm Regina Manyara. I wish you a pleasant evening ahead.
Wewe. Na isitoshe utaosha hata vyombo.
Mimi nioshe vyombo mimi?
Hata unacheza.
Wanaume mzima mimi nioshe vyombo kwa sababu ya kukula chakula ya hoteli hii mimi.
Wait. Mogaka. Kwa ofisi. Plani umepita.
Tangu lini mnaekea mimi michele hivi kama patko? Chukua nyama rudisha huko.
Mimi unapenda kusumbua sasa.
Sipendi kusumbua na leta bwana.
Kwa mtu mimi nataka uchafue.
Nani nionyeshaje jamaa yake saa hivi?
Set up